Pastor, I have a question. Can we sing hymns not written in the 15th century? Now, I'm going to take that question a little bit differently than it's asked, and I'm actually going to answer the question this way and describe to you how I go about going through and picking the hymns that we sing here at Shepherd of Peace and at Trinity for that matter as well. So, all of our hymns, first of all, come from uh, almost all of them come from this hymnal right here, which is Lutheran Service Book, published in 2006, the latest hymnal that we have in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Occasionally, very rarely, in fact, maybe only once in the 6.5 years that I've been here, I have brought in a hymn from the Lutheran Hymnal, which was published in 1941. I might get corrected on that date because I always forget if it's 41, 42, or 43. But I believe it's 1941. The Lutheran Hymnal. I did grab a hymn from here at one point in time. I don't remember when that was. But at any rate, almost every hymn that we sing is from this hymnal right here. So that's the first criteria. Now, you will find that the hymns in this hymnal come from all over the history of the church, not just the 15th century. In fact, probably what the asker of the question meant was the 16th century, since that is where really the majority of Lutheran hymns began to be produced, was in the 16th century. And then also we had a lot in the 17th century as well. But our hymns actually come from a variety of different periods of time. For example, Savior of the Nations Come, the first Sunday in Advent. Every year we sing Savior of the Nations Come as our hymn of the day. And that comes from Saint Ambrose, who wrote this hymn. And Ambrose lived from AD 340 to 397. So we're talking about a 4th century hymn in this case. That's a very old hymn. And we have some others that come from that era as well. But we also have some hymns that are from modern times. For example, one of our communion hymns, number 624, is The Infant Priest Was Wholly Born. This hymn was actually written by a hymn writer that is still alive today, Chad Bird, who was born in 1970. So that's one of the newest hymns that we have in our hymnal. We have some others like that. Stephen Starkey, who's a pastor up in Michigan, he wrote several hymns for our hymnal as well as some things for one of the liturgies in our hymnal were written by Stephen Starkey, Pastor Starkey. I will acknowledge, though, that there are a number of hymns that come from the 15th, 16th, well, let's say 16th and 17th centuries primarily. And the reason for that is simply that with the Reformation, one of the things that Luther really emphasized was using hymns to teach the faith. Well, if you're going to have a bunch of hymns to teach the faith, they're going to need to write a bunch of hymns. And so a lot of hymns, a lot of Lutheran hymns were written in the 16th and 17th centuries. And so we just have a large number of them. That's one reason that we sing a lot from that era. Also, one of the things that you'll note about the hymns from that era is they do tend to be very theologically meaty. There is a lot of meat there, and so they're very good hymns. They've been used in the history of our church for a very long time, and so we do give them a special consideration. That being said, like I said, the hymns really do come from a variety of different times, and we do use a lot of different times. So, I encourage you to, just if you're curious on a Sunday, if you look down here, and I just randomly open this hymnal, if you look down here at the bottom of the page, I don't know if you can read that or not, but it will tell you who wrote the hymn, and it will give you, usually, I think the way that LSB has chosen to do it, yes, is they put the years in which the writer of the hymn lived, or if he's still alive, it tells you when the writer of that hymn was born. And so that'll tell you exactly, or roughly, how old the hymn is that we are singing. Additionally, I wanted to go through and show you how it is that I pick hymns that we sing on various Sundays. So the way that the hymns are chosen is, first of all, I'm only going to use synodically approved hymnals and hymn books. That's actually part of the constitution of our synod, is that we do that. But it's a good guideline because it makes sure that we use things that have been kind of filtered through doctrinal review. And so, we trust that our the leaders of our church, the forefathers of our church are have written hymns that are theologically accurate and that are going to communicate the faith the right way. And so we first of all do that. But beyond that, obviously, that still leaves us with a huge number. So what I do is every 2 months, I sit down and I pick out hymns for 2 months at a time. So the hymns that you're singing like this Sunday are hymns that, well, I didn't actually pick the ones out this Sunday that long ago because I actually just did March and April. But sometimes when you get to the end of that 2-month period, these are hymns that I picked out over 2 months ago that we're finally getting around to singing. They've come up on the schedule. So they're picked usually a long ways in advance. And I do that because it gives our musicians, I try to do that anyway, because it gives our musicians a chance to prepare for that. Because there's a lot of work that goes in to the organist's preparation for a service. It's not just that they show up on Sunday, check out the hymns, and just go. Some of them are very talented and might be able to do that, but I know that they put a lot of time into preparing for these services. So the first hymn that I always pick out every time I pick out hymns is the hymn of the day. Sometimes this is also called the sermon hymn. So the hymn that comes right before the sermon is the one that I pick the first. And that one is usually pretty standard. We have hymns that are chosen for the hymn of the day that have been used as the hymn of the day for centuries. And so we continue to use that one because of its historic usage, but also because it tends to tie together the themes that are in the readings for the day. From there, I expand out and I choose the opening hymn, the closing hymn, and the communion hymns. So how do we actually get to choosing which hymn goes where? I've just randomly opened up the first thing that I will look at, or one of the first things I look at, is this book right here, the Lutheran Service Book Hymn Selection Guide. So I'm going to open this up just to a random page. Here we're looking at just look at the 18th Sunday after Trinity. And you'll see on here that first of all, it has the hymn of the day. Lord, thee I love, my strength, my tower. And then from there, it has hymns that go with all the readings. And you'll see in parentheses, it tells you if it goes with the Old Testament reading, the epistle reading, the gospel reading, or both. And then it has some other hymns down at the bottom that have have themes that fit well with the readings for the day. So this is one of the key resources that I look at. Additionally, I will look at this one right here. It's in a binder because this book is actually out of print, and it's called Planning the Service, a workbook for pastors, organists, and choir masters. So this one likewise has a page, and it has a little bit more information on the Sunday always. Here it looks like I've opened up to the first Sunday in Advent, and it'll tell you some things about the readings. And then down at the bottom, down here, there we go, down here in this area, it's got listings of hymns, and this one even actually has suggestions of how you might have the choir assist with some of the singing of the hymns, especially some of the longer hymns. Now, this one was written at the time that the Lutheran Hymnal, the 1941 hymnal, was in usage, and so I have to sometimes translate, I suppose, the hymn numbers over to Lutheran Service Book if it is one that is in Lutheran Service Book. Most of them are. But that one is one I give consideration to as well. And most of the hymns of the day actually match up between those two resources. So those are the first two things I turn to. I also do have, from time to time, I do have people that submit to me their favorite hymns. And so I do have a list. I have a couple of lists, actually, that I keep in my desk drawer that whenever I sit down and choose hymns, I look at that list and I see, are there any of these hymns that would fit well on one of the Sundays that is upcoming? And so I do try and plug those in from time to time as well. Now, that might mean sometimes that a hymn that you tell me that you like in January, we may not sing it until summertime or something like that, because it was a hymn that perhaps just didn't fit well with the readings. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to brush off your suggestion or that I don't respect your favorite hymn or something like that. It just means that its time has not come up yet. So I do keep note of these things, and so I do appreciate the suggestions that you give. One more thing I'll talk about with the selection of hymns as well, though, is the distribution hymns. During the communion distribution, I have gone with the practice here for the last, I don't know, couple, 3 years maybe, of really just almost exclusively using the section from the hymnal on communion for those hymns. Now, that might seem odd. We just kind of sing them in order for the most part. But the reason that I've gone with that is because really the section on Holy Communion is one of the most theologically rich sections of our hymnal. And there's a lot of good things in there that teach us what's going on in the Lord's Supper. Now, I understand there are some people that don't like to sing the distribution hymns for one reason or another. Maybe it's a hymn that they're unfamiliar with, or perhaps they like to have that time of contemplation for themselves. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. But I will give you the suggestion that if you do need something to meditate on while the distribution is going on, I would invite you to turn to the hymn that everybody else is singing anyway. And you'll see that that hymn will provide an outstanding prayer and perhaps even a review of the doctrine of the Lord's Supper, and will remind you of its value and the great gift that Christ has given us in his body and blood. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit about how the hymns that we sing in church are chosen. The other thing I will note is that sometimes we have to keep in mind that our favorite hymn versus somebody else's favorite hymn may be completely different. This is kind of a subjective thing. There are some hymns that are objectively more theologically rich in content than others. That really can't be disputed. But what you can have arguments about is which hymn one person likes better than another. So your favorite hymn may be a hymn that somebody else doesn't like at all. And your least favorite hymn may be somebody else's favorite hymn. So do keep that in mind as you have your opinions about some of these things, that these things will vary by the person. So I hope that helps you out a little bit with the selection of hymns. Again, I do welcome members of both Shepherd of Peace and Trinity to let me know what your hymns, your favorite hymns are. And I will try to use those whenever the time comes for me to select hymns in the months to come. We'll see you again next time. Keep those questions coming.